My husband was cheating on me, so I made him think I was cheating too, and he lost it. He beat me up. But my real revenge started with the divorce papers on Christmas. Before I start, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Now get ready. They say hell doesn't always have fire. Sometimes it's the form of a man sleeping right next to you. Chloe Morgan was 34, but her eyes looked twice that age. There was something in her gaze that hurt, as if time had just steamrolled over her without permission, as if every blink was a small internal battle. From the outside, her life seemed enviable. A beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood in Connecticut, an adorable son, a successful husband. But no one knew what happened when the door of that house closed. No one heard the thick silence that seeped into the corners, nor the loneliness that sat down at the dinner table with her every night. Chloe always woke up before dawn. Fresh coffee was the first thing that made sense of her mornings. While she brewed it, she'd hear the soft footsteps of her son, Liam, coming downstairs. Still sleepy, he was her only reason to keep going. At 7, he had a tenderness that melted any sadness. Chloe lived to protect him, so he wouldn't feel that anything was wrong. She played the happy mom, the one who laughs at breakfast, even while she was crumbling piece by piece inside. "Mom, is Dad coming home for dinner tonight?" Liam asked with his innocence intact. Chloe froze for a few seconds. She brought the coffee cup to her lips but didn't drink. "I hope so, honey. I'm sure he will. He's working so hard." Liam nodded, not noticing the tremble in his mother's voice. He finished his cereal and went to put on his school uniform. Chloe watched him from the kitchen, wondering how many more times she'd have to lie to protect him. That same morning, while silently folding laundry, she noticed a loose button on Julian's white dress shirt. She got close with a needle and thread, and that's when she saw it. A small reddish stain on the collar. Her heart stopped for a second, as if needing to confirm it wasn't her imagination. She gently ran her finger over the fabric. The color wasn't blood nor sauce, it was lipstick. She didn't say anything, she didn't throw the shirt away, she didn't confront him. She put the garment in the closet like a piece of evidence she'd need later. She took a deep breath and went to prepare dinner. Julian arrived late, as usual. Not a kiss, not a hug, just a quick "have you eaten?" and the dry clatter of his keys on the entryway table. Chloe watched him without saying a word, like someone studying a wild creature that might bite at any moment. He served his food without a thank you. He ate without looking at her, as if she were part of the furniture. Chloe pretended everything was fine, but her eyes were no longer the same. Something in her was beginning to wake up. "Everything okay at the office?" she asked softly. "Yeah, the usual. Meetings, stress, traffic. You know." "Why?" "Just wanted to know how you are." "I'm tired. That's all." Chloe looked down. It wasn't the first time their conversation died in 2 sentences, but now it hurt differently because now she had seen that stain, because now she had reason to think what she had always avoided imagining. That night, when Julian was sleeping face down, snoring lightly, she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at him as if he were a stranger. His skin no longer seemed familiar, nor his scent. Something in him had broken a long time ago, and now she could feel it with an almost cruel clarity. She went to the bathroom, closed the door carefully, and looked at herself in the mirror. The face she saw wasn't hers. She had dark circles, a strange pallor, and sadness pinned at the corners of her lips. "When did you stop being you?" she whispered. There was no answer, just the hum of the silence. The next day, while Julian showered, she checked his phone. It wasn't something she usually did, but something inside her demanded it. It was as if her heart needed the truth, however painful. She found nothing, only work messages, emails, bank notifications. The history was clean, as if someone had carefully erased it. She put it back just before he came out of the bathroom, covered with a towel. "Looking for something?" he asked, noticing she'd gotten too close to the nightstand. "No, just seeing if you left your watch here." Julian said nothing more, got dressed and rushed out. Again, no kiss, no goodbye. That day, Chloe visited Louisa. They had coffee in the kitchen while Liam played with the dog in the yard. "You're thinner. Are you eating right?" Louisa asked. "Honestly, I'm having trouble with my appetite lately." "And Julian?" "Still just as busy." Chloe looked down. She knew Louisa wasn't just talking about work. "Sweetie, you know I love you like a sister, but I'm going to say it straight. That man is extinguishing your light, and you aren't like this. I don't have proof, just a gut feeling. You don't need proof to know when something is over. The soul feels it." Chloe was silent. She gripped the cup tightly. She felt on the verge of tears, but didn't allow herself to cry. That night, instead of sleeping, she lay staring at the ceiling. Julian still hadn't returned. It was 2 a.m. The clock marked every minute with a dry sound like a countdown. When she finally heard the door open, she pretended to be asleep. Julian came in, left his shoes in the hall, showered quickly, and got into bed without touching her. Not a word. Chloe opened her eyes after he fell asleep. The buzzing in her ears was unbearable. Her heart raced. She couldn't go on like this. Something had to change. The next day, she went to an electronics store. She bought a small security device with a built-in camera and placed it discreetly in the dining room wall clock. No one would notice the difference. It was perfect. If there was something she needed to know, she would know it. The anxiety became part of her routine. Everything weighed on her. The silences were getting longer. Julian avoided physical contact. He no longer even feigned interest. He spent hours locked in his home office, speaking in a low voice or saying he had important calls. Chloe listened from the kitchen without moving, like a breathing statue. One day, while folding clothes, Liam ran into the room. "Mom, are you okay?" "Yes, sweetie." "Why are you crying?" She hadn't realized. The tears fell on their own, as if her body could no longer contain so much pain. "I'm fine, honey. Something just got in my eye." Liam approached, wiped her face with his little hand, and kissed her cheek. "I love you very much, Mom. And I love you, my life, more than you can imagine." That night, Julian arrived even later, smelling of a strange perfume. Chloe watched him from the kitchen without saying a word. He didn't even look at her. He went straight upstairs to the bathroom, and while the water ran, she picked up his shirt from the floor. The same white shirt. Again, the same stain, the same shade of lipstick. She returned to the bathroom mirror. She looked at herself again, but this time she smiled, not with joy but with determination. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and whispered, like a promise, "Not yet. It's not time yet." Chloe repeated that phrase to herself as if it were a shield. It was her only way to stay on her feet, not to fall into despair, not to surrender to the pain that was starting to take shape, to show the hidden face of a truth she had always feared. She slept with her eyes open that night. Julian breathed calmly beside her, as if he didn't carry the evidence of betrayal on his skin. Every move he made unsettled her. It was no longer fear, it was cold, sharp, growing distrust. At dawn, Chloe got up without a sound. She prepared breakfast for Liam, dressed him for school, did his favorite hairstyle, and kissed him goodbye with a long hug. He smiled at her from the door as always, but before leaving, he turned and said something that clutched her heart. "Mom, are you happy?" She froze. The air seemed to vanish from the kitchen. She crouched down to his level and gently stroked his face. "Why do you ask that, my love?" "I don't know. You don't sing when you make breakfast anymore. You used to." Liam ran out to the school bus without knowing he had just plunged a needle into the exact center of his mother's soul. That morning, Chloe decided to do more. She went to the utility closet where she kept old things. There, she found a toolbox, cables, connectors, adapters. She took out a small camera she had bought the day before, the one she swore to use only if strictly necessary. Today it was. She carefully placed it inside the dining room wall clock. The lens was barely visible between the numbers. From there, she had a perfect angle of the living room, the dining room, and the entrance. She turned the device on, connected it to her cell phone, and confirmed the image was clear. The sensation of having crossed a line made her stomach churn, but she didn't stop. She needed to know. She had to find out if her heart was wrong or if her world was about to collapse. 2 days passed with no big developments. Julian was distant as always. He came home late, said he was exhausted. He barely ate with them. He just went upstairs to shower, checked his phone constantly, and locked himself in the office. During those days, Chloe tried to approach him. "Is something bothering you?" she asked while he was putting on his tie in front of the mirror. "No, nothing. Why do you ask?" "I feel you're tense, distant. We hardly talk anymore." "I'm busy, Chloe. That's all. Don't start with things. You're always overanalyzing everything." "I'm not overanalyzing, just—" "Stop it," he suddenly yelled. "Don't you have anything better to do than check how I feel every second? Are you obsessed?" Chloe didn't say anything more. She just turned and left the room. Inside, she repeated, "You're not crazy, you're not imagining things. You're not obsessed." That night, when Julian left for a business meeting, she sat down in front of the monitor and started reviewing the recordings. Nothing. Empty. Silence. Just him coming in, going out, talking on the phone in a low voice. Nothing concrete, but something didn't fit. There was a pattern. Every time Julian came home after those meetings, he hid his jacket in the laundry closet, not the bedroom closet, and he left his phone on airplane mode. 2 days later, Louisa arrived. She brought a lemon tart in her hands and a look that couldn't lie. "Don't tell me you came without calling just because you remembered my favorite dessert," Chloe said as she opened the door. "Actually, I came because you're not answering my texts. Are you okay?" Chloe forced a smile, but her eyes didn't follow the gesture. "Come in. I'm making coffee." They sat in the kitchen. Liam played in the backyard, oblivious to the silent universe of the adults. "You don't look well," Louisa said bluntly. "I told you last time, and I'll repeat it now. There's something in you that's dimming. Have you thought that maybe it's just exhaustion? Work, house, son, husband, it's a lot. Don't lie to me, Anna. Not to me. I've known you since you were 11. When you're nervous, you play with the edge of the cup. You're doing it right now." Chloe released the cup, surprised. "Louisa, what would you do if you suspected the person you sleep with every night is hiding something from you?" "Depends on the level of suspicion. There's no proof, but I feel it in every silence. I see it in his eyes, in his lack of a gaze. I don't know how to explain it. It's like he's not here anymore, even when he's sitting right in front of me." Louisa looked at her for a long time. "I'd confront him." "I can't. Not yet. If I'm wrong, I ruin everything. And if I'm right, I lose everything. And maybe you already lost it and haven't realized." Chloe was silent. A knot formed in her throat. She changed the subject, poured more coffee, and smiled out of obligation. She wasn't ready to break down. As night fell, Julian returned earlier than usual. He greeted Liam with a forced smile, ate 2 bites of dinner, and immediately went up to the office. Chloe watched him from the dining room. In her gaze, there was no longer tenderness, only analysis. Julian spoke on the phone in a low voice. He closed the door. But he didn't know that from the top frame, a second small camera, installed that same morning, was recording everything. Without audio, yes, but enough to observe the body language. Nervous, quick, restless. At 11, Julian left the office, turned off the lights, and went to the bedroom. Chloe stayed in front of the computer for another hour, then went up. Upon entering the room, she found him asleep. She lay down beside him and stared at him. Arrogance was still perceptible on his sleeping face, as if nothing could affect him. She closed her eyes and let the darkness embrace her. Days passed, and the symptoms were increasingly evident. Julian answered calls outside the house, locked his phone away, deleted his browsing history, and kept a double calendar. Chloe began reading about patterns of emotional manipulation. What she discovered left her cold. The profile matched. Julian wasn't ignoring her by accident. It was a form of emotional punishment. He made her feel guilty, responsible, confused. There were days when she herself doubted her intuition. One morning, while checking school messages on her cell phone, she got a notification from the hidden device. There was movement in the dining room. Chloe looked at the screen. It was Julian. He was on the phone. He was talking, smiling, fixing his hair, looking at himself in the window's reflection. Then he put on a jacket, the same one he always hid, and left. Chloe saved the video, labeled it Day 11. She now had a complete folder, more than 20 fragments, none with direct proof, but all with signals. That Friday, when Julian said he had an urgent out-of-town meeting, she replied without emotion. "Are you leaving tonight?" "Yeah, I'll be back Sunday." "And who are you going with?" "With my team." "I already told you." "Will you wear the gray jacket or the blue one?" Julian looked at her, confused. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." He lowered his gaze, put on his shoes, and left. That night, Chloe cried as she hadn't in months. Not because she felt weak, but because she realized her love had left without saying goodbye a long time ago. All that remained was the empty structure of a marriage that was now a facade, a lie with decorated walls. Liam approached her while she pretended to watch television. He climbed onto her lap and stroked her arm. "Are you going to cry again, Mommy?" Chloe hugged him tightly. "No, my angel. This time I won't." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and repeated firmly in her mind, "I want to know who my husband really is." Chloe closed the notebook where she had written down every detail of the last few weeks, dates, times, behavior changes. She no longer trusted her memory. Now she trusted the facts. And the facts were there, waiting to be revealed. She felt that something was brewing in the shadows, something she could no longer ignore. Every minute that passed, the distance between her and Julian became an uncrossable ocean. But the hardest part wasn't the emptiness in the bed or the absence at the table. The hardest part was looking her son in the eyes and pretending everything was fine. On Saturday night, when Julian claimed to be away at a business meeting, Chloe turned on the computer and checked the hidden camera. The image was clear. Julian was not at the office, he was not at work, he was at home. The dining room camera showed him entering the house with a woman, tall, slender, dark hair. Her face wasn't completely visible, but the familiarity between them was obvious. Julian held her by the waist as he hadn't held Chloe in years. They laughed. There was a complicity that hurt more than any word. There was no doubt. They weren't co-workers, not a client, not a friend. It was another woman. Chloe was paralyzed. Tears started to run down her face without permission. She swallowed. She felt nauseous, but she didn't look away. She watched him pour 2 glasses of wine, watched the woman sit in her chair, the same one where Liam usually sat to tell his dad about school. Then they went into the office together. The door closed. There were no more images, just the echo of silence. She turned off the monitor, took a deep breath, and sat in the darkness of the living room, hugging her knees. The clock marked 2 a.m. Julian still hadn't left. He was with her, with that woman who occupied the place that belonged to Chloe. But Chloe didn't scream, didn't call, didn't confront him. She decided she would do something different, something Julian would never expect. The next day, while preparing breakfast, she took a photo of herself in the kitchen with her cell phone. She looked natural, smiling with her hair loose. Then she sent the image to Louisa with a clear message. "Can you help me with what we talked about?" Minutes later, Louisa replied, "Of course. My cousin's friend is an actor and is available. How about tomorrow?" Chloe smiled slightly. The game was beginning. That night, when Julian returned home, Chloe acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled, served him dinner, and asked if he needed anything. Julian seemed uncomfortable. He wasn't used to seeing her so calm. The tension was evident, but he didn't suspect a thing. "How was the meeting?" Chloe asked while clearing the dishes. "Fine, the usual. Tired. That's good. I'm glad you're working so hard. You're making sacrifices for all of us." Julian looked at her sideways. She looked back with sweetness, but in the depths of her eyes, there was something else. There was something new, something he didn't like. The next morning, Chloe went to the city center. She had an appointment scheduled with the actor Louisa had recommended. His name was Marcus. He had a kind smile and was a good listener. For an hour, they pretended to be a couple. They took photos, ate ice cream, and even laughed in public. Chloe felt something strange seeing those images. It wasn't guilt, it was liberation. She posted them on her social media with an ambiguous caption, "Rediscovering what it means to live." Not even an hour passed before Julian called her. "Where are you?" "I'm out with a friend." "Why with a friend?" "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Shouldn't you be working?" Silence. "I'll call you later," Julian said, hanging up without saying goodbye. Chloe knew it had had an effect. That night, Julian came home earlier. He didn't eat, he didn't call. He walked back and forth. He seemed restless. "Were you at the mall?" he asked in a dry voice. "Yes. I wanted to distract myself a bit. I've been cooped up at home." "Who were you with?" "With someone who listens to me," she replied, looking him directly in the eyes. Julian frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing. Just answering your question." Julian was silent, went up to the bedroom, and locked himself in. Chloe went to the kitchen, made tea, sat in front of the clock, and activated the monitor. She saw him talking to himself. He hit his forehead. He was losing control. Over the next few days, Chloe ramped up the game. She changed her perfume, started using a lipstick she hadn't worn since she was young. She left fake messages on her phone that Julian could accidentally see. She left notes with fictitious initials in her purse and recorded laughter as ringtones. Every gesture was designed with precision, not to take revenge, but to test Julian's ego, to see how far the man who had lied so much would go. And Julian began to change. He was more controlling, more aggressive. He spied on her around the house. He asked her who she was talking to, told her she was neglecting Liam, that she was becoming irresponsible. Chloe didn't defend herself. She just smiled, and that smile was her greatest weapon. One night, while Liam slept in his room, Julian exploded. "What's wrong with you? You're acting like a tramp." Chloe looked at him with terrifying calm. "Why does it bother you so much?" "Because you're my wife." "And where were you this weekend? Weren't you the one with an out-of-town meeting?" Julian fell silent. "Don't change the subject," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. "I'm not changing the subject, I'm just asking. You have a right to explain yourself too, don't you?" The atmosphere was tense, heavy. Julian's breathing was ragged. Chloe remained serene. Are you seeing someone else? He blurted out. And if I were? The silence became a suppressed scream. Julian approached, grabbing her arm tightly. Chloe didn't scream. She looked at him with a mixture of sadness and determination. Don't touch me, Julian. Don't play games with me. You started this game. At that moment, the bedroom door opened. Liam was there with his teddy bear in his arms. He had heard everything. Dad, why are you talking to Mom like that? Julian froze. Chloe forcefully pulled her arm away. She crouched down and hugged her son. It's okay, my love, everything is fine now. Julian tried to approach, but Chloe raised her hand. Stay where you are, she said firmly. You don't know what you just did, and you have no idea what's coming. Julian clenched his jaw, stood still, looking at her with his fists clenched at his sides. His breathing was heavy, filled with contained rage. He had lost control in front of his son, and something in Chloe's eyes let him know that nothing would ever be the same. Liam, still holding his teddy bear, tried to understand what had just happened. His mother's silence, the tension in the air, the way his father hung his head, not knowing how to react. Everything was broken, even if no one said it out loud. You'll go with your Aunt Louisa tomorrow, Chloe whispered to Liam, stroking his hair. You'll spend a few days with her, okay? Just a few days, my love. Liam nodded with confused eyes and clung to his mother. Chloe hugged him hard, feeling that this was the only part of her life that was still intact. Julian turned around and left the room without a word. He slammed the door shut. Chloe stayed seated on the rug, hugging her son, listening as Julian's footsteps went down the stairs until they were lost in the silence of the house. That night was long. Chloe didn't sleep. She stayed awake, stroking her son's hair as he slept soundly. At 6 a.m., she gently woke him up and prepared a small backpack. Louisa picked him up half an hour later. Chloe said goodbye with a smile, but as soon as the door closed, the emptiness hit her hard. There was nothing left between those walls that could be saved. All that remained was to face the truth, without masks, without fear. Over the next few days, Julian tried to act as if nothing had happened. He left early, returned late, faked work calls, and avoided Chloe. The atmosphere was dense, like a tight rope about to snap. She barely spoke, cooked, cleaned, reviewed the recordings, and planned. That's when she found what she didn't want to see, but needed to confirm. Julian, alone in the living room, talking on the phone. His voice was low, but the words were clear. Yeah, the stupid woman believed it all. She's so busy pretending she has someone else that she doesn't even realize what I'm doing to her. No, don't worry. As soon as I close the land deal, I'll get rid of her legally. I'll keep the house, the kid, everything. She has no idea. Chloe felt her chest freeze. Not only was she being cheated on, but she was also being used. Her own husband was planning to leave her penniless. She, who had quit her career to support his business. She, who had raised Liam practically alone while he traveled, made contacts, and grew. It was too much. Her heart ached as if being squeezed by an invisible hand. She saved the video, labeled the file, and gave it a clear name: verbal betrayal. That night, Julian came home early. He had bought wine, flowers, a cake. I thought we could have a quiet dinner talk. We haven't had time, and well, I realized I miss you. Chloe looked at him from the kitchen door. Do you miss me, or do you miss having control? Julian forced a smile. Let's not start, please. I just want us to be okay. You're too late for that. Not everything is lost. If you want, we can. Do you want to be with me, Julian, or are you saying what you need to say to continue your game? He left the flowers on the table. What are you insinuating? Nothing. I don't insinuate anymore. I don't need to ask anymore. I know. Julian swallowed. You're unwell. You're paranoid. I have proof, she said in a low voice. The atmosphere turned icy. Julian took 2 steps closer. Proof of what? Of everything. He narrowed his eyes. Are you spying on me? I've been doing it for weeks. You stopped being careful a long time ago. Julian came even closer. His face had lost color. Anger began to boil behind his eyes. What do you have? Enough. Julian grabbed her arm tightly. She tried to pull away. What do you have, Chloe? He yelled. Let go of me. Tell me what you have. Everything. I have everything. Julian pushed her against the wall. Chloe's back hit the door frame. The impact cut off her breath. He approached her with crazed eyes. You think you're smart? You think you can humiliate me? Chloe didn't answer. She looked at him defiantly, but her body was trembling. Then came the second blow. He pushed her forcefully toward the table. Chloe fell to the floor. The pain in her hip was immediate. She tried to get up, but Julian grabbed her hair and forced her to look at him. This is for playing games with me. He slapped her. The dining room camera recorded everything. From the first yell to the last tear. Chloe managed to get loose, dragging herself as best she could to the hallway. She closed the kitchen door, but Julian kicked it with rage. The crash woke the neighbors. "You're trash," he yelled at her. "A loser. You were never good for anything." And then darkness. Chloe lost consciousness just as the first police officer knocked on the door. She woke up in a white bed, with cold lights on her face. It was hard to recognize where she was, the smell of disinfectant, the curtains, the heart rate monitor. She was in the hospital. Louisa was sitting next to her, eyes red and face swollen from crying. "You're here, you're alive. You're here," she kept saying, holding her hand. Her older sister, Irene, was also there, always distant, but now with a completely shattered look. "Liam," Chloe whispered. Louisa came closer. "He's fine. He wasn't home. He didn't see anything. He's with me. He's safe." Chloe closed her eyes. She felt a knot in her throat. "I don't want to report him," she said, almost voiceless. Louisa looked at her, not understanding. "What? No, not yet. I want to do something bigger. I want to make sure he can't escape. Chloe, he almost killed you. I know. But I'm going to make sure he pays not just for what he did to me, but for everything else." 2 days passed. Julian was not arrested. He had said everything was an accident, that she had fallen. That they argued, yes, but that he never touched her. Doctors reported the injuries as compatible with a fall. No one wanted to investigate further, but Chloe did. When she returned home, she did so alone. She moved with difficulty. There were bruises on her face, on her arms, on her ribs. She went in calmly, opened the computer, inserted the memory card, and reviewed every second, every movement, every recorded word, the punch, the threat, the push. She had everything. And that night, while Julian slept elsewhere, she began to edit. She cut the unnecessary parts, increased the audio, boosted the brightness, and added subtitles. She prepared everything so there would be no doubt, so no one could say, maybe it was a misunderstanding. She saved the file with a simple name, Chapter 1, The Hidden Truth. She looked at it one last time, took a deep breath, and whispered, "This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning." Chloe closed the file and rested her hands on the keyboard. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear. It was the release of everything she had contained for years. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a few seconds, and when she opened them, there was no trace left of the woman who used to beg for love. Now there was one who had understood that silence had made her a captive, and that speaking was her only way to survive. That morning, from an anonymous account, she uploaded the video to a social network. She didn't write names, dates, or locations, only a simple, raw sentence. "This is what many live in silence." The video lasted less than 3 minutes. The first part showed Julian arguing with her in the dining room, yelling, insulting her. The second, the blow, the fall, the blood. The third minute, her dragging herself away while he threatened her. She posted it and closed the computer. Then she went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, she saw herself as complete. Not pretty, not dressed up, not wearing makeup. Whole, entire, real. The next day, the world was no longer the same. At first, there were only a few comments. Strangers saying the video had moved them, that they knew someone who had lived the same thing, that they were grateful to the person who had posted it. But in less than 24 hours, the video had hundreds of thousands of views. The algorithm pushed it forcefully, as if shared pain were more powerful than any marketing strategy. Messages began to multiply, some asking for help, others confessing abuse. Many women told their stories for the first time, and in the middle of that tide of empathy, speculation began. Who is she? Where did it happen? Who is the man? In a corner of the city, Julian woke up to the sound of his cell phone exploding with notifications. He opened his eyes, confused, still half asleep. He saw the WhatsApp messages, the missed calls, the urgent emails. He opened the first one he found, a link, the video. At first, he didn't understand what he was seeing. Then he recognized his voice, then his face, then his fist, and then everything came crashing down. He tried to call Chloe, she didn't answer. He called his lawyer, he got no response. He called his mistress. She answered, but her tone was different. "What does this mean?" she said, almost spitting the words. "What are you talking about? I have no idea." "You're in the video, Julian. I saw you. The whole world saw you. You told me she was unstable. That she provoked you. That you were the victim. It's not what it looks like. It was edited. It's taken out of context. Was the moment you yelled at her that she was a loser edited too? Or when you dragged her across the floor? Don't judge me. You don't know what I lived with her. Don't call me again. Don't look for me again. And don't worry about telling anyone we were together. Because I don't want anyone to think I was capable of being with someone like you. She hung up. Julian threw his phone against the wall, screamed, hit the table, but he couldn't stop the avalanche that was already falling. The first to distance themselves were his business partners. The email was brief, unadorned. They said the company could not afford to be associated with that kind of scandal. They froze his accounts and suspended him from his positions. Important meetings were canceled. His commercial contracts were rescinded. Then came the media, reporters outside his building, cameras, microphones, questions. Were you the man in the video? Do you recognize your voice? Do you have anything to say? What does your company plan to do about it? Has your wife filed charges? Julian didn't answer. He slammed the door in their faces. He drew the curtains, turned off the lights, and hid like a criminal, even though he hadn't been arrested yet. On the other side of the city, Chloe watched everything from Luis's window. She hadn't returned home since the hospital. Liam slept in the adjacent room. She was drinking chamomile tea, but it was no longer to calm herself. It was to remind herself that she was alive, that now she decided the timeline. Luisa came in with her phone in her hand. You were on the evening news. Your face hasn't been identified, although some already think they know who you are. Some people have connected it to you and Julian. They're destroying him on social media. Someone leaked information about his company. They say there are irregularities, fake contracts, mishandled funds. A woman posted that he scammed her with an investment. Another says he promised her a job in exchange for favors. Chloe wasn't surprised. She knew he had more to hide. It was only a matter of time. Luisa sat across from her. Are you okay with all this? Chloe thought before answering. I'm okay with what's coming. Because this isn't just about me, it's about all of us. Are you going to show your face? No, at least not yet. I don't want this to be about me. I want it to be about what he did and what many live through every day. Over the following days, the figure of the anonymous woman in the video became a symbol. Support accounts, phrases, posters, hashtags, help groups, and testimonies began to emerge. Women who never dared to speak began to tell their stories in public. Silence had lost its power. Chloe was contacted by several organizations. They offered her protection, legal assistance, and psychological support. She accepted some but rejected the spotlights. She didn't want fame, she wanted justice. In the midst of all this, a police detective showed up at Luisa's house. We need to speak with you, Mrs. Morgan, he said respectfully. Chloe nodded and let him in. We have information that your husband, Mr. Julian Rivas, is being investigated for corporate fraud and alleged tax evasion. Are you willing to cooperate? Yes. I have records, emails, documents signed by him, audio recordings. Everything is saved on an external hard drive. Are you aware of his financial situation? Yes. It was my company too until he gradually pushed me out. I can provide proof of how he moved funds to external accounts without declaring them. Are you willing to testify? Chloe looked at him without blinking. I'm ready. That same night, while Julian received a formal summons to testify, not a single light was on in his house. He didn't answer calls, he didn't go out. Anxiety gnawed at his skin. His mistress had blocked him. His social circle had abandoned him, and his own reflection began to repulse him. He called his mother. She didn't answer either. He called his best friend. He only got a voicemail. I can't keep justifying what you did. Don't call me again. The world was closing in on him. The walls seemed to shrink. The only voice still echoing in his mind was Chloe's, telling him, You don't know what you just did, and you have no idea what's coming. Christmas Eve arrived. The house was silent. No tree, no ornaments, no lights, just a half-empty bottle of whiskey and crumpled papers on the table. Julian sat on the sofa with a lost gaze. His phone was dead. The television was on with low volume. There were no gifts, no one else. Then someone knocked on the door. Julian stayed still, as if he couldn't believe anyone else had the nerve to look for him. He got up slowly, walked to the entrance, and opened it. Chloe was there. She wore a red dress with an elegant coat, her hair up. In her hands, a folder. Merry Christmas, she said without changing her tone. Julian couldn't speak. He clung to the door frame. What? What are you doing here? I came to give you a gift. She handed him the folder. What is this? The divorce papers. They're already signed by me. Only your part is missing. Julian received them with trembling hands. Why are you doing this today? Because you destroyed our family for years. But I decided to start rebuilding myself today. And there's no better day to start over than the day you plan to keep lying. She turned around, walked down the steps without looking back, and disappeared among the dark lights of the street. Julian closed the door. He slumped to the floor with the papers in his hands. For the first time, he understood what it meant to lose everything, and he still didn't know that the worst was yet to come. Julian remained on the floor with the divorce papers in his hands while the night's cold seeped in under the door. The silence in the house was absolute. Not a clock, not the hum of the refrigerator, nothing. Just his ragged breathing and the rustling of the folder as it trembled in his fingers. He read them with difficulty, his eyes full of rage but also fear. Every paragraph was a definitive goodbye. There was no room for reconciliation or emotional clauses. Chloe had closed every crack. She left no room for an excuse, not even for repentance. The next day he signed them. He did it violently, leaving marks on the paper. It wasn't an act of acceptance, it was a silent scream, a desperate attempt to feel he still had some power, but he had nothing left. The legal process moved quickly. Chloe didn't seek economic revenge. She didn't want to keep properties or fight over bank accounts. She only asked for full custody of Liam and the freedom never to cross the threshold of that story again. Julian began to deteriorate. First, he stopped eating regularly. Then he started spending days locked up, without showering, without answering calls. He lost weight. His face became paler, and his gaze sank as if he carried stones on his eyelids. The friends he had left no longer called, some out of shame, others out of fear. His businesses were frozen. The investigations continued. Every week he received summonses, notifications, and legal warnings. One morning, as he tried to get out of bed, he collapsed. He fell onto the bathroom floor without even being able to support himself. He woke up minutes later with a dry mouth, chapped lips, and a numb body. He got up as best he could, looked at himself in the mirror. He didn't recognize himself. He went to the doctor at the insistence of his sister, the only one who still called him occasionally, even if only out of moral obligation. The diagnosis was fast, too fast to be processed immediately: brain tumor. Accelerated growth. Malignant. Inoperable. The news broke him. There was no curative treatment, only palliative. He had months left, perhaps less, and the process would be painful. Memory loss, dizziness, episodes of anger, motor difficulties, nothing reversible. For the first time, Julian didn't yell, didn't insult, didn't renounce. He just asked how much time he had left conscious. The doctor didn't want to give an exact number. He returned home with a blank face. He sat in front of the living room window, the same one from which he once watched Chloe leave the house with Liam. He thought about calling her, but he didn't. He didn't know what he could say, that he was sorry, that he was scared, that he had little time left. Nothing sounded sufficient. The following days were a parade of silences longer than the previous ones. He started writing letters, some for his sister, others for people he had harmed without the world knowing. He wrote one for his son, although he didn't know if he would ever read it. He wrote one for Chloe. He didn't sign it, he didn't finish it. He was arrested 2 weeks later. The fraud investigation had concluded. The evidence was sufficient. A network of parallel operations, fictitious investments, false names, and hidden accounts was discovered. There was proof signed with his name, emails in his tone, and audio of his own words. He was handcuffed in front of the same building where he had been received with applause years ago. He was taken into preventative detention while the trial began. He no longer had lawyers, just an assigned defender. His name circulated everywhere, but no longer for power, but for scandal. In jail, the deterioration was more evident. The other inmates looked at him with contempt. They knew who he was. Some respected him for what he had been. Others despised him for what he had done. They didn't bother him, but they didn't include him either. He was invisible, a ghost among shadows. Fainting spells became frequent, as did episodes of confusion. Sometimes he didn't remember where he was. Sometimes he didn't remember his name. The prison director authorized a special visit. Not out of compassion, but for closure. Chloe received the letter signed by the correctional system. She didn't know what to feel reading it. She read the reason for the request: terminal unstable condition. Only requests to see her. Louisa tried to stop her. You don't have to do it. You've already closed that chapter. Chloe nodded. I know, but I need to look into his face at what he never wanted to show me. I need to see if there is any humanity left in him. Dressed simply, without ornaments, without makeup, with no intention of impressing anyone, she arrived at the prison on a Tuesday morning. She passed the controls, showed her ID, signed papers, and waited in a gray room with white light and cold benches. They brought him in 15 minutes later. Julian entered slowly, with a low gaze, thin-aged. His face was colorless, his arms thinner than ever, and a pallor that seemed almost transparent. He saw her seated with her back straight, her hands on her knees. He approached, looked at her, tried to speak, but the voice wouldn't come out. "Sit down," she told him. He obeyed. He sat across from her without lifting his eyes. There was silence for a full minute, only the faint hum of the ventilation system. "Why did you come?" he finally asked. "Because I couldn't close this story without looking you in the eyes and telling you what I never said." "Are you going to tell me you hate me?" "No," Julian looked at her, confused. "I didn't come to hate you. I came to tell you that you no longer belong to me." Silence filled the room again. "I spent years asking myself what I did wrong, what I did for you to stop loving me, for you to ignore me, for you to use me, destroy me, and then blame me for everything. I wondered if it was my fault, if I wasn't enough, if I failed you somehow." "It wasn't your fault," Julian said in a raspy voice. "I know that now. But I had to go very far to understand it, to stop needing your answers, to free myself from your voice in my head. I didn't know how to be better. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. And now I don't even know who I am." Chloe looked at him with compassion, but it wasn't pity. It was the empathy of someone who has healed her wounds. "You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to do with it. You chose to betray, to lie, to manipulate. You chose to hurt me. And now you're paying for everything. Yes, but not because of me. I already rebuilt myself. I already healed. This is between you and life." Julian bowed his head. "How is Liam?" "Happy, calm. He's starting to forget. And that's good. Will you tell him what I did?" "He already knows. Not with details. But he will know that violence is never love, that silence is never a refuge. That his mother knew how to get out of a place where many do not." Julian broke down. He cried in silence. Chloe didn't approach him. She didn't comfort him. She just stood up, picked up her bag, and before leaving, she said firmly, "I forgive you, but not for you, for me. Because I deserve not to carry the weight of what you did anymore. Because I deserve to look ahead without your shadow following me." She left the room, walked down the long corridor, and breathed the fresh air upon exiting. She looked at the sky. There were gray clouds, but it wasn't raining. And even though there was no sun, for the first time, she felt that she was free. Truly free. Chloe brought her hand to her chest and closed her eyes. The air had a different weight now, as if the world had finally released the pressure that had left her breathless for so many years. The voices of her past no longer spoke so loudly. Shame, fear, guilt. All those ghosts that used to sit at her table no longer had a place. She got into the car in silence. Louisa was driving. She didn't ask how the visit had been. It wasn't necessary. Both knew that the important thing wasn't what was said, but what was finally released. "And now?" Louisa asked as she took the exit onto the highway. "Now I start over." They moved the following month. Chloe found a small house in a town in upstate New York, surrounded by hills and with more trees than people. It was a place where the wind still slipped through the windows and the nights were truly dark. There, between the real silence and not the one that covers wounds, she began to rebuild. Liam adapted quickly. His new school was smaller, closer. In the mornings, he went out with his backpack on and his eyes full of light. He went to therapy twice a week. At first, he didn't want to talk. He said he didn't remember. But over time, he started to release words, then phrases, then questions. Chloe accompanied him when necessary. She also went to therapy. Both were slowly learning to be mother and son in a version without shadows. The town was warm. The women of the area received her kindly. One of them, Teresa, was a social worker. Chloe met her during an activity at the municipal library. Teresa listened to her story without asking for details. She just said, "You could help a lot of people here." That's how the project was born. A small adapted space in the town center where women of different ages met every week. Some young, others with gray hair, all with stories they had never told. Chloe wasn't a psychologist, a lawyer, or a professional activist, but she had something worth more than titles. She had truth. And the truth, when spoken without fear, can sweep away what seemed eternal. The first meetings were slow. Gazes avoided contact, lips trembled when speaking, but little by little, a network of understanding, protection, and listening was formed. They didn't need to yell to be heard. They just needed someone to look at them without judgment. One night, after an especially difficult session, Chloe stayed alone at the center, the lights off, the chairs empty. She sat down with a notebook and began to write. She didn't know if it was a letter, a diary, or a book. She only wrote loose words at first, then whole sentences. She told her story without embellishments, not to return to the past, but to put it in writing, so that another woman reading it would know she wasn't alone. She wrote for months. Each day a page, each page a recovered piece of herself. In the end, the book had a title, The Unsaid. She printed it with the help of a small local publisher. It wasn't a major production, but it reached more people than she imagined. A teacher used it for a workshop in the city. A women's organization requested copies to distribute in shelters. A bookstore in the capital recommended it on social media. Then the call came. It was a digital content producer. They had a channel with millions of subscribers and wanted to interview her. The young woman who called introduced herself respectfully and explained that they had followed her story since the anonymous video went viral. Your voice changed many lives, even when no one knew who you were. We want you to be able to tell it yourself. No editing, no script, just you. Chloe hesitated. She remembered too well what it was like to expose herself. But she also understood the value of a story told in the first person. I accept, but not so they can admire me or applaud me. I accept because someone somewhere is living what I lived. And if they listen to me, maybe they'll find a way out. The interview was recorded at her house in front of a lit fireplace, with a background of books and a cup of tea in her hands. She spoke calmly. She didn't cry, she didn't break down, but every word was a dagger for anyone who could read between the lines. She told how everything began. The first signs, the subtle way love turned into fear. How silence stole her voice, how fear took her sleep. And how pain, once acknowledged, was the spark that forced her to wake up. The video was published under the title She Survived, Then Saved. Millions of people watched it, thousands commented. Many shared their own stories, some just wrote, "Thank you." But there was one message among so many that squeezed her heart. A 20-year-old wrote it. It said, "I was about to stay. I thought he would change. I thought I deserved his yelling. Then I saw your story. I packed my bags. Today I'm sleeping at my grandma's house. With fear, yes, but alive. Thank you for being brave before me." Chloe read that message in the early hours of the morning, sitting on her bed with Liam asleep in the adjacent room. She looked out the window. There were no clouds. The sky was clear, black, full of stars. She closed the computer and hugged herself. The next day, she planted a tree in the garden, a small one but strong. She did it with her own hands. Liam helped her. They watered the earth together. "What kind of tree is it, Mom?" he asked curiously. "One that will grow slow, but steady. Like you." Chloe looked at him, smiled, and stroked his face. "Yes, like me and like you." A few months later, Julian passed away in the prison hospital. There was no service, no flowers, just a brief note that arrived in Chloe's name informing her of the death. She read it, folded it, and put it in a box she never opened again. She didn't cry, she didn't celebrate. She just took a deep breath. One afternoon, while organizing a talk at a school, a girl approached her. "Are you the lady from the video?" Chloe looked at her. She hadn't expected that question. "I'm the woman who learned not to be afraid," she replied. The girl hugged her without saying anything else. She was small, but her gesture said everything. That night, Chloe wrote the last page of her second book. It wasn't a story of pain, it was a letter. To her past self, to the Chloe who had endured, cried in silence, who had believed that love meant sacrificing herself. "Dear past me," she wrote. "You weren't crazy, you weren't dramatic, you didn't deserve the pain. You were just trapped, but you found the way out, and now you are light." The book closed with a sentence she would later repeat many times in conferences, interviews, meetings, and in letters she received from other women. She thought love was enduring until she understood that loving starts with yourself. What did you think of this story? There are many people who, like Chloe, are fighting silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice has also resonated within you. If this story touched your heart, share it. Make more people feel accompanied. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place. What city are you watching us from? Reading you makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. Every gesture from you is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't go yet. Our next moving story is already appearing on your screen. Click on any of them and continue exploring this universe of real, moving, and necessary stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. We send you a huge hug wherever you are. See you in the next one.